the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has left Pyongyang for Russia. He is expected to meet Russian President Vladimir Putin in Vladivostok.
Absolutely, It's not often that we see the North Korean leader leaving his kingdom. And according to U.S. officials, he's likely to discuss an arms deal with Russia to provide weapons for the war in Ukraine.
Right now, according to North Korean state media, he left for Russia in his armored train. This train is destined, as I mentioned earlier, to Vladivostok on Russia's eastern coast.
Photos show that he is likely accompanied by top arms industry officials. Among other diplomats and military commanders among the delegation are also prominent military members of the ruling party, including Munitions Industry Department Director Jo Chong-ryong.
Now, analysts say that the makeup of the delegation, it suggests that the visit, it will mainly focus on defense industry cooperation and security affairs. Speculations had been mounting that Kim Jong-un, who rarely leaves his country and had not traveled since the COVID pandemic, would meet Putin to discuss potential arms deals for the war in Ukraine.
The North Korean leader's last trip abroad was also to Vladivostok in 2019, and during that time, he was traveling for his first summit with Putin. It was after the collapse of North Korea's nuclear disarmament talks with the then U.S. President Donald Trump.
Ему именно самому выбраться из своей страны, где он ведет свой режим, свою политику, где у него все там подвязано на том, что он глава государства и все ему подчиняются, и если там кто-то скажет какое-то слово против него, это сразу же расстрел. Ему, наверное, будет интересно посмотреть на нашу страну именно, где все по-другому выстроено. У нас же демократичная страна.
Ну, я думаю, это будет хороший знак взаимной поддержки друг друга в правильном направлении. Эта идея.
Now, from what we're hearing in the latest, Kim Jong-un has arrived in Russia and Vladivostok. As I mentioned earlier, Kim Jong-un has made his way to Russia. Now, in a short while from now, we'll see talks between Kim Jong-un and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Kim Jong-un, again, let me just inform you that he has now reached Russia, Vladivostok, to be specific. Now, let's just give you some more details about this meeting. The meeting between the leaders, it highlights the recent developments where the two nations are seemingly boosting their historical ties. Moscow was a crucial backer of the isolated country for decades. Moreover, their ties even go back to the founding of North Korea, which was more than 75 years ago. As I mentioned, Kim Jong-un has now arrived in Russia. Now, for more details on his visit and, of course, the special train journey that he'd undertaken to reach Russia, Rahesha has all the details on the same. Over to you, Rahesha.
Right, like I mentioned, it's not every day that we see the North Korean leader leaving North Korea, and he's now reached Russia. Let's tell you more about this. Now, the North Korean leaders and their famous train journeys have caught the imagination of the world for a really long time. With Kim Jong-un taking another train journey to Russia, we demystify the tradition and the train journeys for you in the next 1 minute. First, to the tradition. Now, North Korean leaders, starting right from Kim Jong-un's grandfather, Kim Il-sung, have taken long train journeys for foreign trips. Well, in the 70s and 80s, Kim Il-sung took his own train to visit the communist nations of Vietnam and those in Eastern Europe. That was the first train journey taken by him. Meanwhile, Kim Jong-un's father, also Kim Jong-il, also took a 10-day train journey to Moscow in 2001 to hold a meeting with Vladimir Putin. And continuing the tradition, Kim Jong-un has also taken a train journey to Russia. He took in 2019. Now, coming to the specifications, the train which Kim Jong-un is taking to Russia, it is named Taegongo, the Korean word for sun. Well, the train rattles at just about 50 kilometers per hour. And this is due to its heavy armored protection, which provides the passengers with a bulletproof security cover. But the train is not just about security, it is also about comfort. Yes, the almost 20-carriage train is fitted with red leather armchairs and also French restaurant on board. That's very interesting to note here. Well, the Russian diplomats' accounts say that all kinds of delicacies are served on this train. Not only this, reports also say that the train also has conference rooms, audience chambers and bedrooms, along with satellite phones and flat-screen televisions installed for briefings. Well, Haim, it does sound like it's much more than just a train, doesn't it? Well, for more on this, we are now being joined by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis. He's retired military expert and senior fellow for defense priorities. Thank you so much for joining us on Beyond, sir.
You bet. Thanks for having me.
Right, sir, like we've just mentioned that the North Korean leader has reached Russia, and the trip comes at a time when both the leaders are extremely isolated on the world stage. And according to U.S. intelligence, an arms deal is on the table when both the leaders meet later today. Talk to us as to what does North Korea have to offer Russia and vice versa.
Yeah, the North Koreans have a little bit more to offer than is commonly understood. The most people keep focusing on the probability that North Korea could have up to 10 million artillery shells of the right caliber that Russia could use, as well as a pretty sizable stockpile of anti-armor or anti-air missiles. And certainly all that could be done. But there are some indications that some of the deals that Russia is looking to make is to use North Korean labor as well, and to maybe have joint ventures at some of the Korean factories to produce the Russian things that they need, possibly even drones. It's unclear just how far the cooperation could go, but that's something that would imply a longer-term relationship and an expanding of what they've done, as opposed to just making a temporary purchase to give them something they need right now.
Right, absolutely, sir. You've touched on this, of course. But just for more clarity here, what are your expectations with regards to the broader outcome of this meet? Now, as we mentioned earlier, it's not often that we see Kim Jong-un leave the hermit nation.
It's not. And I really think this is kind of an illustration of some of the problems of the U.S. foreign policy over the last several decades, especially because we don't have a lot of leverage here. The National Security Advisor, Jake Sullivan, made a comment that that there's going to be a price to pay if North Korea does give Putin some ammunition, but there's not much room for us to act. We're already sanctioning them. We've been under these so-called maximum pressure for many years now, and so there's not a lot of room left. And now Russia and Ukraine or North Korea don't feel a lot of the pressure that they may have felt in the past to make cooperation together, because the West has already sanctioned Russia to the maximum, and now, of course, also with North Korea. So there's not a lot of threat there. So they have a lot to gain and not a lot to lose, and that's a bit of a problem, I think, for the West.
Right, absolutely. Now, that being said, what sort of a reaction or a response can we expect from the West if there is an arms deal that is finalized?
I just don't think we have a lot of flexibility. There's not a lot we can do. You have certainly many reports that Russia and Iran have been expanding cooperation in both missile technology as well as drones, especially. And they also are having some issues potentially with production of those kinds of things and development there. And there's not a lot we've been able to do with that for the same reasons. And now that you see that there's more and more cooperation with, otherwise isolated people from the West, and now then those things are coming to pass, and it's not a good development, but there's not a lot we can do.
All right. Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, thank you so much for joining us on the show with your insights. Always a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
WION is now available in your country. Download the app now. Get all the news on the move.